We're waiting on it. All right, so we are live. Good morning, everyone. And thank you. Ladies, you need to move a little closer. We're going to act like we like each other. We're getting all nice and cozy here. So thank you so much to everyone who has joined us. I am going to watch the cord blow. That's all I got to say. So we're can't see Han. Can you see?
No, she's good.
No, she's good. Yeah, she's good. Trust me, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here I can.
That's okay. That's what I was saying. So yeah. Okay. So hi. So that's Blair that I'm chatting with. She is the tech volunteer. So thank you so much for Blair being our tech volunteer today. I'm making sure that we could hear and everything. Real quick, thank you to Han, who is our location sponsor for our talk show today. We are at the Perfect Latte in Richmond on the Grand Parkway, right kind of next to the Regal movie theater. So you have to be sure to come here because they have amazing coffee. Exactly, and tea. Oh, that's the morning though. Joe, oh my gosh, it's amazing. So before I have everyone introduce themselves and everything, I just want to kind of give some reminders to our audience that's watching from home. When we are saying things, you hear stuff that you like and you agree with, let us know by giving us some thumbs up, give us some hearts, that kind of thing. Please, when questions are being asked here, that's going to you as well, so be sure to answer questions in the comments. Also, if you've got any questions for us, go ahead and ask those questions there because, again, we'll answer them here. If you're watching this on the replay, still, again, put it in the comments because we're always watching for those comments and answering it there as well. Thank you to the live audience that is here. Woo! Thank you so much. Yay! Thank you. I appreciate you being here. And so, real quick, our topic today is the definition of woman, and is it changing? Do we need to be modifying that word? And so what I'd like for my panel to do, and they're going to be introducing themselves too, so some stuff might seem a little obvious, but they're introducing themselves also for the purpose of the podcast. And so when you introduce yourself, if you could also share with everyone the perspective that you're bringing to the conversation about the definition of woman. So I'm going to swing it down to the end right here with Han. Go ahead, Han.
I thought I saved the best for last.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's why Kayla's on. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am Han Nguyen, and I am the first generation Vietnamese migrant here in this country. I came here at 14, and through a long journey, here I am sitting here on a broadcast and talk show with Christina. Thank you. I have a few perspectives in regarding to being an Asian, being a migrant, and being an American woman here today. That's what I would like to bring into the discussion.
Very cool. Nice name.
Well, hi everybody. I'm Leslie Richardson. Again, co-host.
Yes, ma'am. You are a co-host. Yes, you are.
So thanks for this is a good topic, and I am bringing the perspective of African American woman to this conversation. So it'll be interesting.
Yes.
Awesome. I am Nancy Sabino. I am a Hispanic woman. So I'm bringing that perspective along with my millennial perspective, and also I guess the CEO of a company. So I think that may add something to it. So.
I'm Rebecca Council. I am and you're probably going to be like, what? I am a cisgender, which means that I identify as a woman. I was born as a woman, but I'm also gender nonconforming. So my clothes aren't strictly always female. Sometimes they're female-male. Sometimes they're mixed. Sometimes they're all male. So I'm bringing that part of the conversation in.
Hello, ladies. My name is Kayla Lozano, and my perspective is Latina as well. I am also bringing forth a very proud transgender woman perspective and visual impaired blind community perspective. And it's great to be here. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much. I really am just before we get, I was very humbled and very honored by the women who were on the panel today, and by wanting to be a part of this discussion. I really appreciate that. So thank you very much to all of you for being here. I really, when anybody wants to come and do stuff with me, I'm like, yay, thanks.
What about your perspective?
My perspective is that of a nerd. I mean, that is just, I'm Christina Meade. I am with Nerdy Girl Success, and so I'm bringing the perspective of just a generic lady.
Never
woman.
generic
I'm generic. Nothing generic about me. So the first question that's going out, so I'm going to ask it to the panel, and I'm asking it out there to the audience as well. Just how do you define woman? So just to anybody who wants to pop in, how do you define woman?
I think that it's difficult for one person to define woman for everybody. And so for me, I know that when I hear the word woman, I think of somebody who identifies as a female. Because even though they were born with female genitalia, they may not identify as a woman. So I think that it's anybody who identifies as a female, not necessarily maybe has female genitalia. And so I think that, it's all about who you are to your core. And that's one of the things that I like to stress, because people are like, you don't ever wear dresses. No, I don't ever wear a dress.
Me
because
neither.
it's not who I am to my core. I would feel uncomfortable wearing a dress. I would actually, and I've said this many, many times, I would feel like a cross-dresser in a dress. And so even though people think that I'm a cross-dresser now, and back in the olden days, I would be considered a cross-dresser.
Huh. Well, yeah, because wearing guys' clothes, because we're liking
Yep.
to wear guys' style clothes. Okay, yeah.
And so for me, wearing a dress,
I don't think any of us are in dresses.
yeah.
I hardly ever
So
wear dresses.
I know.
even like how she's dressed
She
with
being
the
Leslie,
pearls,
yes?
I would
Nancy with the pearls.
I would feel like I was cross-dressing. So
Oh,
I
very
think it
interesting.
just depends on how you identify to your core, and not necessarily your genitalia.
I think it's very interesting because growing up, I was a tomboy. I was always in shorts, basketball shirts. I mean, you could not catch me in a dress.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was older and a mom, I guess, more so, that I then started to identify more with femininity and starting to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But before, I mean, you could not catch me at all in a dress or anything like that, whereas now I enjoy it. And I used to question, what is a woman?
Right.
Even when I was younger, because I didn't fit into the definition that was put in front of me, either by my peers or my parents or who I had as examples.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. I really would quick want to just thank you, first of all, everybody who's like popping in and saying good morning. So thank you to Aaron and Blair and to Tracy. And I think Carol is there. Thank you guys. Good morning so much for joining us. And Erin is popping in and she says, I think woman is a self-definition. So kind of like what you were saying, Rebecca, not a definition to put on others. And then Tracy had said, every single person on your beautifully diverse panel this morning defines woman, in my opinion. The definition is as individual as every person on the earth. So, and that is, so is that how you guys feel too? That like, that is like, we get to decide, like each individual person gets to decide, or what do you think, Kayla?
Well, I think it's a great question because it's one that I pretty much struggled with for most of my life growing up.
Right.
I had the great opportunity of being raised in a family that was predominantly female. And my mother was a single parent, extremely strong. She taught me, the epitome of a woman. And that's where I got to see firsthand what it was like to be a strong woman that was vulnerable, that was experiencing a lot of hardship, but at the same time was still pushing forward. So I had that opportunity to really live in that, in those experiences. But at the same time, in my own personal life, I struggled because I wanted the barriers and the challenges of being a trans woman who was not quite visible at that time at such an early age. And in a time that was very difficult to kind of be myself.
Right.
So I kind of had to hold that in and suppress that for years. So my definition of for being a woman is, of course, very personal to me. I think it's all-encompassing. It's strength. It's vulnerable.
It's hidden at times, but at times it's pretty much very much out there, just like in this kind of platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, and that's interesting that you said that because I am doing the research for the show. I looked up, so like, okay, so like, what is the dictionary definition of woman? So the dictionary defines woman as being adult, human, female, biologically. Get this kind of like, member of the fair / gentle sex. And then capable of bearing offspring. So like that is like what the dictionary was defining as what woman is. I know, and so like that was one of the things, and I think I posed the question to Rebecca and Kayla. I think I posed this question to you guys in the Facebook chat of like, so is there a difference between female and woman? Because like for me, being the science teacher kind of person that I am, I'm kind of like, well, there's definitely like physiologically there are the differences where like when you're talking about like organisms and things like that, like if we strip away like essentially like your human essence and things, then it's part of classification of an organism. So do we have like female like that, like female is an organism that produces ova, and then woman is like how you feel, like you were saying, like to your core. I was just kind of wondering like how you guys feel about like, is that something you're like, no, Christina, you are so off your crock, it isn't even funny.
No, I think definitely that there's a difference. I identify as a female because I am cisgender. And so I don't identify as a male, but when I was younger and people would call me a lady, it would piss me off.
Oh, I remember calling you a lady.
I am not
Oh my
a
God, she almost
lady.
bit my head off.
You know, back in the day, a lady sat proper. She sat with her legs crossed.
Oh yes, her ankles
And
crossed.
her ankles.
Yes.
She sat with her hands placed properly in her lap.
Yes, ma'am.
You know,
I'm
she
sure you're
had
like,
the perfect.
So you can't see.
Her
For
legs
those people
were
who are watching via the
properly
podcast,
crossed.
yes, we cross our legs, our hands are crossed, we're very nice and it's all about making yourself smaller.
Yes. And so I think that woman carries that type of connotation with it. And so I much rather prefer being called a female other than a woman.
Okay.
Because I think that still in my head, and you know, when I see people from the Good Old Boys Club,
Yeah.
they don't refer to us as females, they refer to us as little lady or the woman of the house.
Yeah.
And you know, that's just not true. In my house, we have 2 women and my wife is much stronger than I am.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think for me it's all about perception and maybe the times that you were brought up in and the places that
Right.
you were brought up in.
You know, I was to say about that,
Yeah.
as far as where you're brought up, that's interesting you say all that. So I was born and raised in Oakland, California, San Francisco at the time, you know, growing up, 30% gay, and we saw a little bit of everything. And so I was exposed to a little bit of everything at a very early age. By
Yeah.
default, never thought anything different. But as far as the definition of a woman, I truly believe it is in your mind. You know, anybody can call themselves a woman and believe it. And hey, if that's what you call yourself, that's what you are.
Right.
That's how I've always seen it.
Right.
Because I've seen that. I mean, back when it was the term, what were we saying? The term transvestite. was a
Oh,
big
that's
term
right.
back
Yeah,
in
we
the
were.
70s.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And so, you know, or cross-dresser or what have you. And if you identify as being a woman, that's I was brought up. That's what you are, because that's what I saw. That's how they introduced themselves to me, and that's what you are. But I think as far as you know what you're exposed to growing up and the environment you're in, that has a lot
Right.
to do with it. Because even just the thought of like the whole strong black woman and all this,
Right.
you know, black women been through a lot over the years and what have you. But so I do prefer the term woman over female, to be
Oh,
honest.
nice. Okay.
Because that's interesting, the dictionary definition about the whole childbearing and all that.
Yeah.
Because not all women can have babies.
Right, exactly.
Not all women want to have babies.
Right, thank you.
That's another story. That's
Right.
a whole other conversation.
That's another
But
episode.
that should
Yeah.
not define you as a woman.
Right.
Even if you have the equipment, so
Right.
to speak, to give birth.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, I know I just went all over the place with that, but
No, that's okay. No,
but
that's-
just it's, you know,
No,
it's a
but
very
that's
personal
great.
thing.
Exactly. So that's
Yeah.
one of the things too that I'm kind of wondering why I kind of asked the panel that I have here is because I'm wondering if culturally the dynamics of, you know, woman and man, how that plays into how you are perceiving. Like, I'm just wondering, like, within, like you're bringing up, Han, like, how is that communicated verbally and non-verbally about what a woman is?
Okay, so that's interesting. You use the word perceive. So for me, it is a self-perception. Growing up, watching my mom, I came here when I was 14. So my dad, after the war, he was in the concentration camp for 6 years. So I didn't even know that he existed until I was 6. So my mom stayed and waited for him until he came back. So watching her over the years going through that, I learned to be a strong woman. And then I'll see women that go out and work and bring home the bacon versus the man in my culture, in my country. And then the male is just nonchalant, sitting in a coffee shop, smoking and having a nonchalant conversation, and then go home and beat up the woman. So, funny stories, I would tell my late grandfather, can you teach me Kung Fu? And he said, for what? I said, so I can beat up my husband.
Wow, it's just like you had the expectation, and like that's what I'm
totally,
going to
this
end
is
up
like
with. And
12.
so,
Because I see that, because I hear that, and I'm like, no, it's not going to happen. Not to me. Yeah. And
Wow.
so that's how I become the woman I am today.
just curious, do you know how to, did he teach you?
My dad won't let me because I think he's afraid I'm going to kill somebody.
That's what it's kind of like. That's what I was like.
So
Okay, so
don't
just
make her
note,
mad,
exactly,
just
like
in
note to
case.
self
Yeah.
on knows kung fu. Listen, Angel popped in and he said his definition of woman is a human, strong and vulnerable, unique but similar, perfect yet flawed. And Aaron is, I know, I'm like, it sounds
Who's
like he's just-
Angel?
Angel
I
is,
like him.
Angel is Nancy's husband.
Ah.
He knew better. No, I'm sorry. Angel is
You taught him well.
I know, right?
No, that's
Angel
just-
is.
how he is.
I was gonna say, I
That's
just,
just who
we're
he
throwing
is.
shade to Angel's way, but he really is, and honest, like that is who Angel is, and that's pretty darn awesome. Aaron said, "There's nothing wrong with anyone that only wears skirts, jewelry, and prefers to be a mother that cleans and cooks, or even be both on different days." Exactly. It's awesome to get to choose for yourself now. I can't wait to see how it continues to open doors to all people in the future to get to be exactly who they feel inside. And that's one of the things, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation too, is because I feel like there is, I don't know, like there's this conflict. I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm around a lot of people who have these thoughts and these feelings and these kinds of conversations. But then when we look out into society, it still is, you know, where there's the traditional, definition, if you would, of woman, of female, and that kind of thing. And, you know, I went to a dictionary because judges use dictionaries in court cases. Like there was the, good morning, Tammy. There was the, I can't remember what state it was in, but there was a marriage. I was a transgender woman who was married to a cisgendered man, and he had died. And so his children had taken her to court because they didn't think that she should, they were saying that the marriage was null and void. It wasn't really a marriage because of the fact that this had happened. And he looked up in the dictionary marriages between one man and one woman, and a transgender woman is really a man, and so this isn't a marriage. And yeah, she got none of the nothing. And so it's just like, you know, so that's why I was kind of like, we really need to have this kind of conversation, because while we have, it seems like individual people who feel this way, what do we need to do to bring that out into society and to start getting this kind of change happening in society, you know?
I think in general,
Or is it happening?
when it comes to legalities of everything, a lot of it is set, you know, as far as dictionary definitions and precedents. We're in a different time. Things are going to change by default because they have to change because it's a different time. I mean, there was a time when just as far as who can marry who,
Right.
right, and what's considered, just when things go all the way to the Supreme Court, it makes a difference, and that's where it's going to start. It's a long road ahead,
Right.
but it's going to change because we're not in that box anymore,
Right.
which I think is a beautiful thing.
Right.
Yes, it is.
It's a beautiful thing because my definition of woman, I think, is strong, powerful, and everybody's. It's very different for it's very personal for
Right.
different people, but that doesn't mean anything when you go to courts. You
Yeah,
know, they're
absolutely.
looking at a definition on paper
Right.
that's been there since the beginning of time that has not been updated.
Yeah.
So speaking of legalities real quick, my wife and I have been together 15 years. We've been legally married for almost
Better,
5.
I'm like, you better get it right.
Almost 5. And we decided to get legally married, not only because we love each other and we want to spend the rest of our lives together, but one of the things was the legality of it.
The
My
protections.
mother-in-law died of cancer in 2012. And me working at home and her living with us, I was her primary caregiver. So I was the one who took her to her cancer appointments and took her to, all of the doctors and took her for blood, and poor Christina, she had to listen to it.
That's okay. It's all right.
And so,
I'm getting the look at me, so.
and so one of the things that really hit home for us was that, well, you can't be here because you're not her daughter.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so one of the things that we had to make people understand was that I'm her daughter-in-law. And for less stress on her, we just went with daughter. Because
Right.
she didn't need to be dealing with all that. She had enough to
Right.
deal with.
Right.
And so my brother-in-law, who I call him my brother-in-love, starch Republican, and I love him dearly. Hi, Jason. But he was the one who said, if y'all want some protections, y'all need to do something legal about it.
It's true. Yep. It's very
And
true.
so
Absolutely.
that was one of the reasons why I took my wife's last name. When we got married, people were like, oh, you're going to take Rebecca's last name, and no, you're going to do this, because she's the masculine one, right? And so my wife is a therapist. By the definition of her soul, she's a therapist. And so I would not strip her last name away from her because it's counsel, and that's what she does.
Oh, yeah.
And so, for legality purposes, it's really hard, even when you're not transgender, but even if you don't look the part of what a traditional couple looks like.
Right.
Because we get that look all the time.
Yeah, I want to echo that. I think each one of us here redefines the definition of woman. And I most certainly try to every day in the work that I do at school, in my advocacy for transgender rights and people with disabilities. I try to push that. I try to push that definition because I do not I keep thinking about that box. And we've talked about that earlier, about being placed in that box. And for me, when you asked about what my definition of female was, I'm completely reminded of that application of the gender box, male or female. That was so binding to me. And it always, and to so many trans people, so many gender nonconforming people. And it can be very problematic and cause such internal conflict, such internal pain. And so that for me was something that, yes, I carried proudly, like a badge of honor, female, but at the same time it was also very problematic. So, I mean, woman for me was something that was, like I said, all-encompassing. It was something that was inviting. It was where I identified in so many levels with so many other women, different types of women. And I thought that was always very important. So for me, redefining and pushing the boundaries of womanhood, that is what is necessary, and that is something that I try to do every day.
Absolutely. And I just, like you were saying, the checking the box. I mean, even, because there are times when, you do have to kind of where you're up against that. I tried having a conversation with a friend of mine who, when the whole bathroom thing came up, and I, that's another time where I'm just kind of can you imagine needing to do a biological function as simple as going to the bathroom and walking up to 2 doors and being posed with the problem of whichever door I pick, I'm probably going to get the shit beat out of myself, pardon myself. But I'm just kind of, I can't imagine living a life like that, you know, and having to have that because of who you are when you're outside of that room and being that woman and presenting yourself as a woman and feeling that you're a woman, but then society has put something there where it's just kind of like, well, we got to check you here.
So they
So-
put you in the box.
I know, exactly. So it's just kind of like, again, so that's why, again, it's kind of important. Like, do we need to, like, how do we broaden this whole and get people more accepting of the fact that things are changing? Because, I mean, she's, love her, but, you know, and I've got a lot of friends who are, you know, they are the cisgender, white, Republican, whatever, but they're just kind of like my age, who's a little older, and then older of just, you know, this is what the way things go culturally, this is the way things are, and having great discomfort with it being different, and why does it have to be different? And it's kind of like, well, because it is.
Because we are different.
I know.
But that's
Exactly.
how change happens, though. I mean, if you think about it, all the change that has happened in this country in the last 50, 60 years,
Yeah.
it was uncomfortable
Yeah.
Right.
for a lot of people. And it's kind of like, well, that's too bad because we're
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
whoever we are, right?
Right.
And so, you know, people, you learn to live with it. And then I think part of it is because people are so isolated, they don't know anybody
Right.
who's transgender, they don't know anybody who's cisgender, you know, all the different terms.
Right.
There's a lot of people who don't know any black people still, you know, and so it's kind of like they're so in their box, in their bubble, because they
Right.
don't have these people around them,
Right.
you know, and that's part of the problem,
Right.
because the minute you're exposed to somebody other than someone like yourself, it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, they're not trying to, you know,
But you're
do harm to
human
me
too.
necessarily.
Yeah.
You're human, and you get to know somebody, and it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe the perspective I had was, you know, wrong, or maybe I could change my perspective a little bit because now I'm exposed a little bit.
Or
so
maybe
that's
there's
where,
room for
there's room.
another
Yeah.
perspective.
There's room. Is that they realize there's room, and I think that's how change happens because, you know, uncomfortable is not a bad thing.
So when I would go back and forth to Junction to see my mother-in-law, it's a 5-hour drive. A lot of times we'd get up in the morning, we'd just throw on our clothes, throw stuff in the vehicle, and go. So one of the things that I loved was a baseball cap, and it was black, and on it it said "girl," but it was like a kickoff of the Phillips 66 emblem.
Right.
So, you know, it was kind of cool. It was orange, and I love orange. And so,
color,
you know, there you go. And so one day we stopped at Buc-ee's, and, you know, Buc-ee's has the bathrooms where you walk in, women go this way and men go this way.
Right.
And I was walking into the ladies, because that's the sign and that's my gender.
Right.
And a lady said, "Oh, the men's is that way." And I said, "No, I'm a female." And she's like, "Oh, you sure are." Well, and I'm like,
She looking at your at your chest and said, "Oh my god."
Nice.
and so then she looked at my baseball cap and she said, "Oh, so the cap is so that people know you're a girl."
Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow.
And I was
I needed to
like,
slap a
"No, the
label on
cap is
myself."
because I didn't brush my hair this morning."
Oh my
I mean, really. And so, you know, for me, that was the first time that I ever had a bathroom issue.
Yeah.
And so, you know, nowadays I still get looks when I walk into a female labeled restroom. And one day I walked out of a gender neutral restroom and this guy said, "I thought you were a guy in there peeing because you were peeing so hard." And I was like,
Wow.
really?
What are you doing listening to me pee?
Even our urine dictates if we're male or female? Really?
Apparently.
I was like,
All that
At
comes
first-
down to is people are so ignorant. It's just
They
it's
are.
laughable after a while. You know,
at
you're like,
first
"Really?"
I was like, I can't believe he said that. And then as I was walking away, I was laughing because I was like, really?
Dude,
Even
I would
our
have stood
urine
outside the door and went like, "Are you sure you're not a girl?" Because you
Kinda
pee
trickle.
awfully quiet.
you just kind of trickle. I mean, I was like, wow.
Conversation is turned.
I know, I'm like,
Okay,
we're
so
like,
back to it.
back to normalizing. Well, I know, sorry. Oh, so and actually, yeah, Carol, she said her sister has been mistaken for a male, and she's got short hair like you. She likes short hair and stuff like that. And I've seen pictures of her. She's muscular, so I can
I'm just
see.
mad.
Shut
But because of that, some people think that I have man boobs.
People just-
I'm all so yeah. I'm all about educating people
Yeah.
on what you should say and what you shouldn't say.
So,
Yeah.
so I'm going to say this.
Spill it, Han. Here we go.
Well, no.
Been waiting
question,
for it.
Question, actually. I had a friend, had, in quotation mark.
Uh-oh.
She is a male transgender.
Okay.
And I literally put her on the spot one day because he was going to the gym with me. And it was not a warning because my expectation was that you're going to go to the men's locker room. And on the way there, he go, watch what people are going to say. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then as he entered, of course, people were saying that men is over there on the other side. And so I thought about it, I slept on it, and then the next morning I said, why did you follow me into the woman area? Oh, and so his excuse was, oh, the man was dirty, blah, blah, blah. So I said, so you pick and choose where you can go. Is it what you're doing? Because if you work so hard for so many years to define you as whoever you like to define yourself,
Yeah.
why are you picking and choosing now?
But so I'm gonna so I'm gonna play a little bit of devil's advocate, or like the flip side of that coin is because again walks into the male locker room or whatever, but is anatomically female and is going to need to disrobe. You don't think he's potentially going to get harassed?
I don't know.
Because I'm like that's to me. I'm like I could like that's where I can totally see like that would happen. Like if he hasn't had the surgery and then all of a sudden he's having, I'm like I'm like I'm sorry, I would have been with him. I would have walked into the ladies.
And that's
Yeah.
usually something that is extremely difficult, and a lot of people face children in schools.
Yeah.
And on a daily basis, a lot of the bullying comes from this. This is something that is a constant struggle, is bathrooms. Simple things that we
Yes.
talked about earlier is just like something that is biologically natural to all of us, but is something that we carry with us on a daily basis. Something that makes people commit suicide and take their lives, or depression. And unfortunately, it is dangerous in the bathrooms.
Yeah.
I can understand why your friend decided to, even though they went through that whole process, probably still found some type of safety in a women's restroom as opposed to going into a men's restroom, just because perhaps maybe they'd experienced something in the past, or maybe had a really bad encounter that it kind of like traumatized them to the point that they're like, you know what, I just want to feel comfortable, safe, and do what I need to do.
Yeah.
For me, the men's restroom was absolutely not an option.
Yeah.
I could not think about going into the men's restroom. Anatomically, I have the features of a biological woman. And so for me, it is like, I couldn't think about it. So when this whole bathroom issue was coming into play, I was concerned, because I was like, how is that going to happen? And are people really going to stand outside the bathroom and check my ID?
Right.
Just listen to you pee.
Right. So it really depends, you know. On a personal basis, there are some people who have the opportunity to use whatever bathroom they can and not be harassed. And unfortunately, there are those people in the population and community that cannot, that aren't afforded that opportunity, unfortunately. But it's just, it depends, you know. Sometimes it is a safety issue.
Yeah. So let me just, Erin's popped in a couple times. She says, I love all these points, and it's great to start seeing less labels in younger generations. We have to teach our kids that it's okay to be different. That's one of the biggest changes we make daily. I'm going to come back to that point in just a second, because there's a little, not against you, Erin, sorry. And she says, my kiddo gets called a boy, but we knock that down ASAP. Hairdos, clothes, style, has no private parts, so it doesn't matter what you look like, it's how you feel. Want to wear glitter dresses today and long shorts tomorrow? Do it. And I absolutely agree that, like, the whole thing of that. But so, like, okay, so this is like one of the things where, again, maybe it's my perspective that I'm bringing to the issue. Because it's kind of, so I watched, I don't know if you guys ever watched, like, Lisa Ling's series, I think it's called, like, This is America or America Today. This is Life, that's right. This is Life. And we talked about this episode. So, like, they had an episode where it was, essentially, like, what's happening with kids today, where there's, because my niece had to, like, do some education with me of, like, pansexual and non-gender conforming and all that. I was kind of, because I was like, so what, huh? I'm like, just catch me up. I'm like, that's all I want to know. But then, so like, they're doing an episode on that, and in there, they're talking about like not wanting to have the labels. Okay, but then it's kind of like, okay, but in a way, there is a need for labels. I think it does help with understand, like, it gives us a frame of reference, I think. But then also, like, within this episode, like, they're in the room and they're talking about like not wanting to have labels and things like that, and then they walk outside and there's all these stickers and you can pick which sticker you want and it's a label. And so I'm just kind of like, okay, so like really, like, labels are
Forced onto us by society.
but that no, because those were labels that they were picking for themselves.
Right, but if you're going to have to pick a label,
Mhm.
you want a label that identifies you.
Right.
So
That's
for-
what labeling. So there's not. So label's not a bad thing.
So wouldn't you rather just be referred to as a female or a woman, not a cisgender, straight woman who has red hair, with glasses, who's nerdy, who has a podcast or a live stream? I mean, all of these are labels that we have to fit into so that society knows how to reference us.
Right.
So I think that if I'm forced to choose a label,
Right.
I'm labeling myself. I'm labeling myself. I'm a cisgender, gender non-conforming
Right.
female who is a lesbian
Right.
who loves my wife. That's
Well,
my
yeah.
label.
But see, but so I guess, I mean, like, I see your point where you're talking about, like, I have an issue with labels as in who's putting the label on me, where I'm just kind of like, but human nature, like, needing to know that this is a table and labeling it as a table, and, you know,
I think
who people
labels-
are.
I think labels are needed when it comes to how we understand and communicate with each other.
Right.
So I think that is the basis of why we do need labels, because otherwise we're going to read books by their cover and not get to know people.
Because it's human nature.
Because
yeah.
it's human nature. So in a way, we do need those labels. It's just sticking to the black and white labels that society places are what is the problem or creates
Right.
a problem today.
And I agree with that to a point. I think that it helps people feel safe when they can find other people with their same labels.
That too.
Well, okay, but wait,
That's-
but no,
that's
because that is a
human
good
nature.
point.
That's
That's
human
human
nature.
nature. But here's my other thing too: is that though recognizing, like, I mean, I had you guys essentially tell your labels when you introduced yourselves, because that's that label, that is your perspective that you bring. That's the filter by which you see all of life. And so my being able to understand that that's the lens that you're looking at the world helps me interact with you, though. It helps me understand you. Like, by my understanding, you know, to some point, I don't want to say understanding, but kind of sort of like the experiences that Leslie has had because of the fact that she's a black woman is different than the experiences that I have. Like when we walk into a retail shop,
So-
you know, so that enables me to have some empathy and things like that in situations and things.
So her label for her is so that you can better understand her. It's
Absolutely,
Not it's
but-
not about her and her perspective.
but it
because
is.
She is who she is.
Right.
So her label allows you to put some perspective around who she is.
So that way, but then that way I understand when we're having a conversation about something, that I understand that, like, how she's gonna go to potentially a shop in the mall, and she's gonna have somebody following her around, and I'm not, and being able to recognize that, and recognizing why that is the way that that is.
So somebody who's pansexual
Mm-hmm.
won't have that. Do y'all know what pansexual is?
Oh, my niece told me and I forgot.
So you brought it up, so I wanted to
I know.
make
I'm like,
sure
I need
that
index
you're-
cards so that way I can keep it.
I wanted to make sure that they were not like,
Right. No, no,
so-
no. And for everybody who's watching too, like,
So-
that may not know.
help me out. So pansexual is different for different people,
Right.
but it is a label that somebody uses when their sexual preference doesn't depend on the other person being a cisgender, straight, female, guy, whatever. They can be,
They're just attracted to whoever
they're attracted to the inside of the person.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's the old definition of what we used to use as bisexual.
Okay.
And now it's drawn out to pansexual because there are more than just two genders. There are more than just two sexes. And so we had to have something that encompassed that. And so pansexual has kind of panned
Oh, there you go.
the
I thought that was sexual fluidity
See,
or
now
something.
your whole thing,
Yes.
like,
Same
see, like
idea,
when you,
same.
Yes.
Okay.
see, when you said that though, I'm like, the little scientist in my head goes, but wait, there's only two.
no.
There's ways of feeling, there's different ways of feeling, but like, but the little
Gender is fluid,
gender is fluid, but you didn't say gender, you said sexes. There's
and sexes is fluid.
See, and that for me, like, again, that's the little scientist going, no, there's two. There's one that makes sperm and there's one that makes egg, and those are that. And that is the scientific organism.
So I
So
don't
it's a-
fit into either one of those categories because even though I'm a cisgender female,
Right.
I can't have kids.
Right.
I've never had a hysterectomy.
Right? But you probably produced ova.
I don't know what that is.
Hey.
So
I probably like blasted everybody out by leaning into the microphone. So,
So
sorry.
also there's the thing of what people used to call hermaphrodites.
Right, exactly.
And so, they are people who have both sexes.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
you're right.
they may or may not,
But so you just
have
said both
eggs.
sexes.
because back in the day, that's what it was
Right.
concerned.
Right.
And so they are their own. They're not female, they're not male,
They're both.
they're both.
Right.
So that's their own thing. They could
Yeah.
be part of one and part of the other.
Yeah.
And there you go. That's more than two sexes.
And so, Christine, what you're doing is putting everybody in the
Yep.
box of one or two.
Or two.
Right,
The,
and
sci-
she's
the
saying
little,
that
the little
box doesn't
scientist
exist
in my
anymore.
brain
Right.
is doing that.
Yeah.
I
The
am not
scientist
doing
in
that
her
because
brain.
I'm an evolved human being. No,
But
I'm just kidding.
Rebecca's saying that box does not exist anymore because
Right.
of these, different
Yeah.
And
variations.
so
Mhm.
now,
Okay, so wait, I'm
now
gonna throw something else out.
what the state of New York is doing
Uh-huh.
is creating that avenue where they're allowing people to either check male or female
Uh-huh.
or X.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so no wait. So
Oh,
not,
in
okay.
Europe they were doing that as well.
Oh, interesting.
Sorry. I just-
You're good. Okay. Oh,
Fun fact. Yes.
crap on a cracker. I had something. Wait, I'm going to read Aaron's. Aaron says maybe labels are okay if we all accept that it can change anytime it isn't constructive. Okay, wait.
Yes.
Thank you, Aaron, because you helped me remember what I was saying. Okay, so I had another conversation with a mom, and she had gone to it's this squirrel that runs around in there. I swear. She went to like a Christmas party or something like that, and so there were kids that were there that like in their 20s, college kids or whatever. And so she came back and she was like, "Do you know that the kids there got like offended when I used the wrong pronoun with them?" And so I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
So here's the first of all, it's like, how am I supposed to know? Like, don't get offended the first time I use the wrong pronoun,
Right.
with wrong label, when you haven't told me. Like, how do we know? How does anybody, like me as the little white cisgendered lady sitting over here, I'm like, how do I know that you, while on the outside anatomically you look like a female, but you want to be him, his, how am I supposed to know?
Yeah. Well, I would like to say that
Yeah.
my pronouns are she, her, hers, first of all.
Okay.
And for me, on the topic of labels, I wanted to. I was happy with the pronoun she, her, hers. I was very quiet about who I was. I wasn't an open trans woman until 3 years ago,
Oh, wow.
and this all happened in the course of being in college. And we were having this conversation about transgender people, the transgender community. And for me, I was the only one in the class who was open at the time, who was, not open, but who identified, and that was, that they were having this conversation basically, and it was about people in my community. And there wasn't really enough conversation being had. And what was
Right.
being talked about was really textbook. Was scientific, if you will,
Right.
and very boring in general and broad, and
Yeah.
not in the least relatable or anything close to the human condition. So for me, I had to be visible. I chose to take on the label of an open trans woman because I wanted to be visible not only for other trans people out there, as maybe even a role model to a certain extent, but to other people to say, like, look, this is a person who does evolve and is a part of our community,
Right.
is around us. This is what this person looks like. Kayla, as herself, looks like this. She, her, hers, identifies as this. And on the topic of pronouns, I would say that you leave it to the person to kind of come out and say, because they normally
Yeah,
will.
okay.
My pronouns are she, her, hers, he, him, them, or they, them, theirs. It really depends. And a lot of times, why not just refer to them
Yeah.
by their name?
Yeah.
That
Well, exactly.
usually
So it's
is the
just-
safest thing
yeah.
to do.
Well, it was because didn't you? I think you were saying, Nancy, the other day when we were at lunch, that that's what you do now with the kids is that you're asking them, because she has a 13-year-old daughter, and so you go ahead. I'm not going to talk to you guys.
So these are conversations that we have around the table all the time, as far as her friends go and so on and so forth. And she, in her community, it's very broad, and she's friends with all types of people and so on and so forth. So who we meet, it becomes how do you want to be referred to? Who are you?
Right.
Is the question that we have to ask and that we've thought about in that way, because we don't want to offend someone or refer to them in a way that they are uncomfortable. And so but we have had an incident where, before we knew all this, it was she, and my daughter would correct us, or they have said something to us. And so we've had the conversation with the kids themselves of, don't get offended when somebody doesn't know.
Right.
Right.
You have to be able to let us know. And I think that's why I was saying that labels are necessary as a means of communication.
Right.
Because otherwise we don't know.
And I think it's okay. It's okay if you're trying, as long as you're trying and you're giving that perception of somebody who's genuinely empathetic and is trying. That will really resonate. That will come through. And people aren't going to get it always right. And I know that we're constantly changing, evolving things. Definitions that are in vogue today are going to be completely different 10 years from now.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's been
So
different
it's
from
okay.
10 years ago.
You're
Yeah,
right,
So that's
exactly.
a good idea that you say, just ask.
Right.
Yeah.
Name.
Right.
So instead of asking, what are you? Say, what is your name?
Right.
Yeah.
Because from there you can pretty much kind of start a conversation and getting an understanding.
Right.
And on the way up here, Kayla and I were having a conversation, and we totally got somebody's gender wrong without thinking about it on the way up here. I know that this person identifies as they, and because I knew this person before they was around, they was a she. And so still to this day, I identify this person as a she, and I catch myself all the time. And it's okay. And so even as somebody who is in the community, on my email signature, it says pronouns. It's not preferred pronouns, it's pronouns. Because my pronouns are who I am to my core, not what I prefer.
Right.
And so my pronouns are she, hers, and hers. And so if somebody calls me he, okay, it's
Yeah.
fine. I would rather they call me they than call me he if they're going to misgender me or mispronoun me. But still, I'm not going to get all up in your business about, I'm not a he, I don't, I'm offended by that. I will just say I am a she, and if you're going to use pronouns, I would prefer that you use she, but if you can't remember, it's okay. And as long as I don't get upset about it and I correct you as often as need be, I'm okay with that. Because it's hard. Me and my wife, we misgender our animals all the time. All the time.
Like we're like that.
With your friend, part of it too, even just like nicknames. You grow up with somebody, you
Yeah.
call them their
Yeah.
nickname, and they're become an adult, they want to go by
Yeah.
the actual name or what
Yeah.
have you.
Yes.
And you know them as their nickname, and they're like, don't call me that anymore. 'Cause
I know.
don't want other
Mom
people
and
to know
Grandma,
that."
stop calling me Chris.
Right.
My
So
mom,
it's out of habit sometimes. It's nothing. It's no offense taken, but sometimes
Yeah.
it's just out of habit.
Yeah.
my family is the only, and not my wife, but my immediate family is the only one that's allowed to call me by my childhood name, which was Becky. Because I no longer, we've had that conversation. And so I no longer fit that. I
Right.
no longer am a Becky. I don't look like a Becky. I don't fit a Becky. you know, my name is
Okay.
Rebecca.
But
And
if you
so-
run into somebody from your early childhood, that's what they're going to know
Yes.
you for as, and then you
so
have to correct them.
I have friends now that I've reconnected with from high school and even junior high, and so I've had to gradually bring them over to Rebecca.
Right.
Or if they want to short it, they can call me Reb. That's fine. That's what Catherine nicknamed me when we started dating, and so it's hard if they're being facetious about the gender. That's one thing, but for somebody who has animals, and we've had them for quite a long time, they're not new to our household because our animals don't play well with other animals. So for us to misgender our babies, I mean, come on, really? And we're with them every single day.
And you don't know what they really prefer. I'm
Right?
just saying.
That's true.
By the way, Angel popped in and he said, I don't want to offend by using a wrong pronoun, but don't bite my head off either. And
Right.
exactly. And I think that's what
Right.
a lot of people, I think, like in my generation, by the way, it's also Rebecca's, haha.
Yeah.
That's that kind of thing. Because again, it was only like your she, her, hers, him, his. And so we didn't have the whole thing. And so I think that's where some, like a friend of mine had the incident where it had where they were at that party and they used the wrong pronoun and the kid bit their head off.
And
so
Day
that's
has
where it's
only
kind of
been
like,
out for a couple. Day has only been out for less than 5 years.
I
right?
didn't even know until this conversation.
So,
really? Well, there you go. Learn something new today.
Yeah. So Day is still relatively new,
Mm-hmm.
and so if somebody misgenders you, just take it with a grain of salt that they're not doing it on purpose.
Right.
That they're probably our age, and that's probably all they knew growing up.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know what's funny about that? You're saying it's only been around for 5 years. I've always defaulted to they. Years ago.
Well, because it was
if
grammatically
I-
incorrect.
If I didn't know, but if I, somebody
I
at
know.
work and
Yeah.
wasn't quite sure in San
Right.
Francisco, you just sometimes didn't
Well,
know.
that's true.
You just didn't know, literally.
You're from San
And so
Francisco,
I
so-
would refer to just by default because
Yeah.
I didn't want to offend.
Yeah.
You were
Right.
ahead of the time.
I guess so.
I used so good. But I mean,
you being
seriously.
the forefront leader.
I know. Alrighty. Well, we've actually, I'm so sorry. I'd like just looked, I'm like, oh my gosh, we've been on for an hour. So, I know, we usually are only about a 30-minute show. So this has been a great conversation. Real quick, Han, I want to give you the opportunity, since you are our location sponsor, I would love for you to please tell us about and tell the audience about the Perfect Latte, like what you do here, where you're located, and you have lots of really cool events. So tell us about some of the upcoming events.
So I told my children that I didn't give birth to, who work for me all the time, this place is not about coffee. It's about community. It's about people. It's about relationship. And that's what we do here. We build community. We build relationship through a whole bunch of things that we do. This kind of things, I love to have it here. I love to host. I love to sponsor. We have pet adoption events. We have event for local business owner to come in and promote their business. And for the fun part of it, we have live music, pretty much all Saturday, beside holiday weekends. And if people come in and pop up and say, hey, can I do a book signing here? I was like, yeah, why not? The more the merrier. So that's what we do here. Come check us out. Follow us on Facebook at theperfectlatte.com, Instagram, and so you can stay update with what we do and the cool things that we bring over to the community all the time, every day.
And she makes a really awesome coffee, just saying.
This is
really
really good.
Yes, and tea. That's the Morning Mojo
Yes.
favorite.
Very good.
What did you have,
I
Nancy?
had the macchiato, with
Macchiato.
Ethiopian beans.
Ooh, that's where you get to
I know,
pick your
right?
beans here.
Yes, you get
It's
to
so
pick
cool.
your beans.
So cool. Anybody else have anything up and coming that they want to promote, talk about? Anything, Kayla? Anything you got coming
Well,
up?
I would just like to say thank you for letting us have a voice
course.
on this panel. This is ideally a voice that is usually you hear very less about, and so it's been really an honor for myself. And speaking for myself, I don't want to speak for you, but it's been
Rebecca's
an
not
honor
honored at all.
to be here and to be able to share with you ladies and kind of open the discussion and just really let people know that, you know what, we're going to make mistakes. We're all human. It's okay. The world is cruel out there, but it doesn't have to be.
Exactly.
We just need to, hang on to each other, and I think everything will be fine.
I think so too. Well, Nancy, Leslie, you got anything you want to talk about? Rebecca, real quick?
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, it's pleasure to have you.
Oh, you're talking about.
And thank you for allowing us to come on and talk
Please
about
allow
our
me.
differences with different types of pronouns and sexes and the way that women define themselves today. Hopefully with this, women who are contemplating how they can define themselves differently will be able to get a better view as to it's okay to not even know how to define yourself yet.
Yeah.
That's something that you have to figure out for yourself.
Absolutely. Well, that's what that's what every episode of the talk show is about, is really kind of looking at some of the unconscious biases that we have, recognizing that we have them is part of them being able to kind of change society, which that's who I am, is like, I want to make the world a better place. So, that's what I'm trying to do here. So, and if you don't like it, so sorry.
Sorry, not sorry.
I know, sorry, not sorry. Just real quick, I got a couple things that I wanted to promote with Nerdy Girl Success. I've got the women's conference coming up March 8th, Friday, March 8th. That is International Women's Day.
Yes,
Woohoo!
yes.
Where's it going to be at?
It's going to be at the Hotel Island.
Wow.
I know, very
Nice.
excited. It
Very
is
fancy.
a women's conference. It is the fundraiser for Nerdy Girl Success this year. So please, if you're interested, let me know. I can send you the link for that. But we're going to be talking about power and money, my two favorite things. And then we also have, that's actually going to be the day too, that the magazine, the Leadership magazine, is going to be launching as well. That's a place where women and girls who don't usually have a place to have their voices heard, we are putting them into that magazine so that way people can hear what it is that they have to say, because they have some pretty darn amazing things to say.
Oh, yes.
So thank you so much again. If you are catching it on the replay, again, if you got questions, comments, put it down there. We always converse back with you. By the way, Erin says thank you to everyone for their views, opinions, and experiences. And Carol said, I've enjoyed the show. Thank you for inviting me. Of course, Carol, of course. All right, thank you so much. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.